Welcome all to the Pro Football Radio Podcast. This is your co-host, Jay Cheema, with the pride and joy of Merrimack, New Hampshire. One, Da Puma.
Love it. I love that intro, Jay. Love it. I said it last week, but I'm really a fan of the deep build-up and then the high-pitched Da Puma. So it made my day today, Jay.
Well, listen, I would usually go with a Da Puma, if you were a very tough, The Rock kind of figure.
Okay.
But who you are right now, you're just like a Carol Baskins ditch. So I'm gonna be like Da Puma.
Okay. I'm glad I know my role in the pecking order. Thanks, Jay.
My man, how are you? Week 3 has concluded. We are starting to get more information about how the league is going to shake down as the days go on. I have a good understanding of what I'm looking at. How about on your end, sir?
Dude, it's been a hectic week and a hectic couple of weeks. We had the Falcons gonna Falcon, and I'm gonna get into that with my storyline.
Did you know something called #Falconing is a real thing now?
I'm not surprised. You know what? I'm gonna save it for my takeaway.
Okay.
But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that's a trending thing on Twitter. But no, a great couple of games. Chicago is going to Chicago, and they went to St. Nick. And on paper, last night was supposed to be this battle of the clash of the Titans between Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. It ended in a blowout, and if it wasn't for a kickoff return from Duvernay, that scoreboard could have been a lot worse. It went from it could have been a massive blowout compared to a slight one. Let's just say.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that here shortly. But before we get into all of this, as always, let's give you guys a quick rundown of the content of Podcast 61. We're going to start it off with a couple of storylines we curated for you guys from the Week 3 slate of games. I'm going to be providing you with storyline number 1, which is the best team in the NFL, or essentially the best 3-0 team, and the worst 0-3 team. So we'll get into that. And then the Puma is going to give you guys 2 storylines as well. And will that be good, sir?
That will be... I buried the Falcons last week, and I'm going to double down on them this week. It's going to just be the ineptitude of the Atlanta Falcons, and just going to talk about how bad the NFC East is as a whole. Because my God, that is hands down the worst division in the entire NFL. But real quick, Jay, before we get to your storylines, there was a developing story earlier today between the Tennessee Titans and the Minnesota Vikings. And for those of you that don't know, there was, I believe, 8 staff, mostly coaching, and I believe maybe a couple of players or two for the Tennessee Titans that tested positive for COVID. And then I believe there was a couple of positive tests as well for the Minnesota Vikings. And as of recording right now on the 29th at 7:20 in the evening, the Titans will not be in their facility until Saturday at the earliest, according to reporting from ESPN. And the Vikings may be able to go back into their facility within the next 24, but it seems more likely 48 hours. What are your thoughts on that? Because it could have a lot of scheduling implications for the 4 teams involved, because the Titans are facing, I believe, the Steelers, and then the Texans are facing the Minnesota Vikings. So some are in the conference, some of them are not.
So first things first, let's preface it by saying between now and Sunday, it's a long time.
For sure.
And the one thing that we need to realize in COVID times is day by day you get more information, day by day technology advances. So I'm not ready to just kind of call off the game just yet. I know that was one of my biggest issues with the Big Ten, was I thought they prematurely canceled the season when they had such abundance of time and how quickly everything changes. Now, secondly, this was gonna happen. Simply put, you couldn't go throughout the whole season without having 1 or 2 or 3 games being missed because of COVID. It's just gonna happen. You're not in a bubble environment like the NBA or the NHL, and you are gonna see flare-ups. Now, the key here is, and this is where I think the NFL is gonna separate itself, it's about preparation over panic. I've had this massive issue with how people will just randomly throw up their hands, at the first sign of trouble. They wanted the MLB season to essentially end when there was, a couple of teams that had quite a bit of an outbreak. But from everything that we can see, after they squashed that little flare up, the MLB season continued on without any issues. So I think the NFL is going to step in. They're going to play it by the book. They have a game plan. There's going to be a lot of preparation, a lot of their, rules and protocols that we put into play here, and I think they'll come out with some sort of solution, whether that's either playing the game, whether that's rescheduling, whatever they need to do to make the season go forward. They'll end up doing that.
Yeah, for sure. I think really at this point, if anything is on the table, I mean, I know it's going to be hard for teams to especially the Titans, not really be able to go to the facility until Saturday. It's just going to be a glorified walkthrough, if anything. But I think really the only option, if there's more information that comes out from the test results and whatnot, rescheduling would be within the cards. I thought I saw a report that one of these two games could possibly be moved to Monday night, and they'll just kind of adjust the schedule as they go. But based on what the NFLPA and the owners came to an agreement with the protocols, it seems, pretty above board. It's really there's not a whole lot of gray area compared to the, MLB, where they're really just concerned about how can they get the most, amount of dollars out of a truncated season. And they never really crossed the COVID protocol bridge. But from what I'm seeing here, it seems like everything's well within hand, and, it'll just be an interesting next couple of days until we figure out who tested positive, how's this going to shake out the schedule. But I kind of would like to see how they're going to shuffle the schedule if need be, because there's a lot of moving pieces, especially for the Texans and Vikings, who aren't in the same conference. So that would definitely be something interesting to see.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, at the end of the day, the NFL, I do believe, has some leeway built into their schedule. I know when the schedule came out, they made a big fuss about this is the schedule. But listen, when it's a $10 billion a year industry, they're going to essentially go through every scenario, have a backup plan. And I am more than confident in Roger Goodell essentially coming through with flying colors, man. At the end of the day, I made this statement a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. I do believe our commissioners, whether it's NBA, MLB, NFL, have provided supreme leadership during this time, probably more than most of our politicians have, and I have full faith in these guys and coming through in the clutch.
For sure. On that note, get to your first storyline, good sir.
Yeah, before we get to that, let me just give the listeners a quick rundown of what the rest of the podcast is going to entail, because we do have a special guest coming on today. After we get through our storylines from week 3, we're going to bring on our good friend Josh McNutt from the Shire. He's going to be talking about essentially what his thoughts are on his beloved New Orleans Saints, and essentially if he's off a Drew Brees wagon. He'll stick around, and we'll actually go ahead and preview some of the marquee games in week 4. So with that being said, you ready to hit this, bro?
Let's do it.
Storyline number 1. The best 3-0 team that I have seen so far in the NFL, right? So there are a few teams left that are undefeated, and I'll start with the Buffalo Bills being undefeated, the Chicago Bears being undefeated, Green Bay Packers are still 3-0, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 3-0, the Seattle Seahawks are 3-0. Now, immediately when I was thinking about this topic, I had to disqualify both the Chicago Bears and the Pittsburgh Steelers, because I don't know if they are really good teams just yet. And it's interesting. We all know the Chicago Bears, they might be fraudulent. I mean, I think I don't have to go deep into that discussion. But I think they are, right? But the Pittsburgh Steelers are interesting because I didn't realize the people they beat have a combined record of 0-9. Did you know that, Brandon?
Yeah.
So when you have a record of 0-9 and you're 3-0, like I don't want to go and give you the the love and adulation just yet. So I'm gonna reserve judgment on those guys. But when you will it all down, I was really looking at 4 teams for being the best team, and the Buffalo Bills, the Green Bay Packers, Seattle Seahawks, and the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think last night when I was thinking about the podcast, and I was thinking about essentially who I'm going to pick for this best team in the NFL superlative, I thought I was going to lean toward the Seahawks or the Green Bay Packers. I was going back and forth in my mind. But after watching Monday Night Football and after watching the Kansas City Chiefs demolish the Baltimore Ravens, I think it's fairly clear who the best team in the NFL is, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know why it's come as a surprise to us. I mean, we thought maybe the Ravens were gonna, essentially step up this year and take away that mantle from the Chiefs in the first 2 weeks they have. But last night, head to head, man, the Chiefs just made Baltimore look silly, made them look bad, made them look like a juvenile team. I mean, that score was it 38-20 or 36-20 was way closer than the game itself. Now, in regards to just, some of the reasons why the Chiefs are so good, man, it's like Mahomes at the end of the day. The guy is just an animal. He's at a different level. He's trying to separate himself from Lamar Jackson. He's already way better than, Deshaun Watson in my eyes. And truly, I think he's in an above class than Russell Wilson as well, man. Like, I think the guy is just, he's insane. Like, I don't know how you stop him, right? But I will say one thing about the Baltimore Ravens and their approach last night to playing Patrick Mahomes. They brought a lot of blitzes off the edge. And when it comes to Patrick Mahomes, man, like if you bring blitzes off the edge, he's just going to slide to the side that doesn't have the blitz and chuck it downfield. When you want to blitz Patrick Mahomes, you want to contain him and bring the blitz up the middle through the gaps. I don't know how many times the Baltimore Ravens came off the edges blitzing, and it's just something that's not going to get you far against Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, you hit it on the head. I mean, I'm right there with you. It's the Kansas City Chiefs, dude, and there's really no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, you have the whole let Russ cook campaign going up in the Pacific Northwest, but it's not even close. And they had their way with Baltimore, and they scored at ease at times. And like Baltimore, they came out and they gashed them. They gashed the Kansas City Chiefs on the ground. But as soon as they kicked that field goal, which I'm not gonna lie, in the first quarter when it was what was it, like 4th and goal or some nonsense like that, they opted to kick a field goal, and I was thinking to myself, this is the most un-John Harbaugh thing I've ever seen, because he was one of the first guys to really champion analytics over the last couple of years and go for it on 4th down and try to punch the points in, looking at all the numbers and the stats that back going for it, compared to just settling for 3 points and putting the defense on the field. And it was kind of the most un-Harbaugh game ever. I'm not going to put the whole loss on Lamar Jackson. His receivers were brutal last night. Mark Andrews has to catch that touchdown. What's his name? Hollywood Brown. He had a couple of really crucial drops. I mean, there was a lot of blame to go around. Wink Martindale, like you said, with the blitz packages and blitzing too much, in my opinion. I'm in that school of thought with you. And Greg Roman, I think, called a timid game. There really wasn't any up-tempo-ness. There really wasn't anything going on. Lamar Jackson couldn't really get the ball going down the field through the air. It was just a rough night. So the rest of the league is on notice, dude. I mean, barring an asteroid hitting Arrowhead Stadium and taking out the entire Kansas City Chiefs, like they are at the top of the mountain right now. And the messed up thing is like this defense isn't at full capacity yet. Like Rashard Breeland is still suspended for at least one other game, and a couple of people have been dinged up recently. Like, if this defense gets full bore, like they just neutered the Baltimore Ravens. The Kansas City Chiefs were a 3.5-point underdog, and they neutered Baltimore on their turf. This defense gets all, like, the whole band back together. Good luck. That's all I gotta say.
Well, listen, let me bring up the Lamar Jackson angle of this, because listen, he's 0-3 against Patrick Mahomes, right? They always say, once, I get it. Twice might be a coincidence. 3 times a trend. And I'm getting to this bigger picture about Lamar Jackson, where I buried Deshaun Watson last week. But I think for me, Lamar Jackson is probably one more bad playoff, appearance away from me, proclaiming he's not that, upper echelon quarterback that Patrick Mahomes is. Because for now, we were all putting him in that league with Patrick Mahomes, but it's seeming to pan out with the numbers that he's not. And I'll give you a quick update on the numbers that I saw on TV the other day. Well, I think this morning, actually. He is 0-5 versus the Kansas City Chiefs and playoff teams. He's 21-1 against everybody else, right? So he lost that one game to the Browns last year, but he's 21-1 and with some spectacular numbers. His quarterback rating is like 120 something. But when he plays the Kansas City Chiefs or playoff teams, and when it really matters and the pressure's on, everything goes south for him. He loses those games, and on top of that, his numbers get cut in half. Like his quarterback rating went down like a 68. Like you're starting to see a trend via the numbers that the guy isn't a big time performer when it comes to those pressure pack situations.
For sure. And like I'll give you like two fun facts of the pod today. The first one, in his press conference, either at the end of the game last night or this morning, when media kind of had a little quick access to do a follow-up, he basically came out and said what Kansas City was doing on the defensive side of the football is basically what the Tennessee Titans did in the playoff game. Mm-hmm. Now, that is alarming to me because you think that your coaching staff and yourself would recognize this and adjust the game plan going into this week, being like, hey, there's tape on us in the playoffs. This is how they went up against us and sacked the box or did whatever. And they really didn't have a game plan for that. And my second fun fact of the pod is, did you know that starting from 2018, which I get is pre-Lamar Jackson, that the Baltimore Ravens are 0-9 when trailing into halftime. So they are the definition of a front-running team. And they are the only team in the NFL to not have one victory going into halftime when they're trailing by, just trailing by any sort of margin. I think the benchmark was 10 points or more. So that means Adam Gase coached teams, New York Giants coached teams, whether that's Pat Shurmur or whoever before then, like they actually have a victory over the Baltimore Ravens in that win column. Like they are ahead of them with coming back, trailing in halftime. Like if the blueprint to beat this team is just to get up early and take them off their game plan, and Baltimore really has to adjust that because their schedule doesn't get any easier.
Well, Brendan, a lot of times, and this is, if you watch enough football, you realize this, that if you're a run-based team, if your offense is going through the running attack, then that means your quarterback really isn't that great at passing the ball. I mean, that's in layman's simple terms, right? And essentially what's happening with the Ravens is once they get into those situations that's like 2 and 14 or, 3rd and 10, when instead they're used to 2nd and 7 or 3rd and 3, like if they're in those situations, that's when they get out of their offense and that's when they're uncomfortable. And you saw that last night. You saw the Kansas City Chiefs put them in those situations where they had to throw the ball and throw it effectively. And for some reason, Lamar Jackson couldn't come through on those situations.
Yep. Nope, for sure. Absolutely. So they better handle their business in the first half or they're screwed unless they all of a sudden evolve into this aerial attack where actually the receivers hold on to the friggin' football. But, yeah, the tape's out there. Good luck.
Awesome. Well, go ahead with your storyline, good sir.
The Atlanta Falcons, Jay, like, I don't understand. They are the definition of choke artists. Like you would have thought, man, that coming out of the horrific fashion that they lost to the Dallas Cowboys, that they would have ratcheted a few things up and they would have, handled their business against granted at the time, a 2-0 Chicago Bear football team, but we all know that the Bears are fraudulent. They had Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback, and they couldn't really get anything going on the offensive side of the football, and the defense has been okay at best. And, dude, like they come out of halftime, Matt Ryan looks like the complete opposite of the Matt Ryan that we know. I don't even think he had a completion in the second half up until maybe the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. And by that point, yeah, go ahead.
He had 8 consecutive incompletions in the fourth quarter that really buried that team essentially, and then he threw that interception to end the game.
Yep. It was just absolutely brutal, and I get it. This defense is a turnstile, but the offensive side of the football for the Atlanta Falcons should be able to keep up with whatever the defense is hemorrhaging points wise. And like they couldn't get out of their own way, and Russell Gage got hurt, but I mean Nick Foles comes off the bench, and it was like one of those ultimate, let me crack the beer open. Hey guys, hold my beer real quick, and just took them up and down the field. And the Falcons are the first team in NFL history to blow back-to-back 15-point leads and just lose in horrific fashion. And, dude, I don't know how anybody made that plane ride home. Like, if I'm Arthur Blank, I'm canceling the team charter. Or they weren't even on the road. They were at home. I was like,
was
I'm
like, you can't
revoking
go
their
home
building
tonight.
passes. Like, like that comment last year when Jay Gruden said in Jay Gruden fashion, well, I'm gonna show up, and if my badge doesn't work at 5 o'clock in the morning, I know. Like, I would have just denied access. I would have denied access. I would have had armed security escort these clowns out of the building. These aren't the Atlanta Falcons. They really did. I don't know. I don't know what happens. I don't know where they go from here. Like, they need to have a change, but Arthur Blank doesn't want to fire anybody right now. But something needs to change because the coaching staff is horrid. The blown leads from this season and then the Super Bowl, the ghost of Christmas past is still haunting that organization. Like, I don't know what they do. Like, Jay, do they bring in a team psychologist to, like, kind of cure this issue of not being able to seal the goddamn deal? Like, I don't know where this team goes. Like, what do you think they have to do?
Well, listen, let's start with the Falcons themselves, right? So I don't think it's necessarily a issue on the offensive end because if you look at the stats, the guys are putting up points and they're putting up yardage and they're putting up touchdowns, right? I think the bigger issue here is that defense just seems to have horrifically bad spurts in these games. Now, I think that is pinned solely, obviously, on Dan Quinn because he is supposed to be a defensive-minded coach, right? Like, I understand Matt Ryan had a pretty bad, horrendous fourth quarter, but at one point he did get that team in position to be up like 15 points or whatever it was, right? And I think Dan Quinn, obviously, that you've already said this, he has to go. He has to go immediately. And I think I'm going to take it one step further. I truly think that Arthur Blank is lacking the leadership and the balls here to step in and do something to correct this. Because essentially, you're seeing what's happening in Atlanta being something from a top down, man. Like, these things don't just happen, over and over again if you don't have the right leadership from the top down. Like, you think, like, after, I don't know, if Robert Kraft is in the situation, you think Robert Kraft would be able to stomach this and have these guys come back day to day? Like, I think at some point you guys are looking at Arthur Blank himself as well.
For sure. And, I'm going to do like a movie analogy here, but there's a scene in the movie The Natural where, Robert Redford's character, Roy Hobbs, he gets called up and he's on a losing ball club and they're in the middle of a losing streak. And they bring in like a sports psychologist to try to cure the team of the yips and not blowing leads or blowing games anymore. And they just kept losing in horrific fashion. Like, all right, Arthur Blank, I'll play. You don't want to fire Dan Quinn right now. All right, let's go over the next couple of games before their bye week. They are in Green Bay. That's a loss. That's fine. Whatever. Green Bay right now is the better team. Okay. The Carolina Panthers at home. That should be a win. The Minnesota Vikings on the road in Minnesota could go either way, but the defense for the Minnesota Vikings isn't the greatest either. That's going to be a high-scoring game. They could win that. The Detroit Lions could win that too. The Carolina Panthers again. And then finally, before their bye week, they have the inept Denver Broncos who may or may not have Drew Lock back. If they lose to Carolina twice and they don't win against Denver and Detroit, I'll give them Minnesota because that could go either way. If they go to that bye week and they lay eggs in those games, Dan's got to go. Like, there is no excuse to bring him back November 22nd against the New Orleans Saints. There's no excuse.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, I think he's got to go now. For
sure.
It doesn't matter what's going to happen in the next 3-4 games. Like, essentially we'll get to the Jets here in a second, but the Jets, there's rumblings out there that, because of their 0-3 start and how bad they've looked, the owner of the Jets is actually hiring a firm to look at coaching talent, right? So I think the ownership in Atlanta needs to do the same exact thing. I don't know why Arthur Blank is dragging his feet here, and I think if I'm an Atlanta fan, I'm calling for Arthur Blank to do something here.
Yeah, real quick before I move off the storyline, Mike Tanier of now Pro Football Network, but he's a national columnist for, say, Yahoo Sports and the New York Times and whatnot. He wrote the perfect article to sum up the Atlanta Falcons. And the headline, real quick, Atlanta Falcons, most disappointing team in the NFL, most disappointing institution in modern society. Watching a Falcons game is like being a preteen child whose parents recently divorced, waiting for dad to come take you fishing for your birthday, getting 2 phone calls from dad swearing that he's just running a little late, waiting all day on the porch with the tackle box in your hand, and visions of strippers in your head, swearing through tearful eyes to mom that he'll arrive any minute now when she calls you in for dinner. Finally giving up on you to cry in your mom's room at sunset and running outside when you hear his car pull up at bedtime to find out that he is drunk and just came over to tell you that he never really wanted children. Then he proceeds to run over your dog as he pulls away. That is the Atlanta Falcons in a nutshell, dude. That is the perfect article by Mike Tanier to describe this team.
Wow, that's a lot to take in, but I think you're right.
Yep. Yeah. Good luck, Fido. Good luck, Fido. He didn't want any kids. Yes, that's the Atlanta Falcons right there.
Last point on that before I move on, man. And I feel bad for Matt Ryan, man. I feel bad for Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. They have so much talent. They have amazing talent in Atlanta, man. Like the guys are out there battling, and they're battling hard every week because they're up in these games. They're putting points up. It's just they got to put it together for 4 quarters. So I don't know, man. This Monday night, I think you're gonna have a high number, on the overnight ratings tuning in for that Monday Night Football game, just because people are gonna be like, well, the Falcons gonna Falcon again. Let's tune in and find out.
For sure. That's what I'm gonna do.
All right, let's move on to the second storyline of week 3. So earlier in the podcast, I gave you guys my best team out of the 3-0 teams, and now I'm going to give you my worst team out of the 0-3 teams, and we have quite a good selection of 0-3 teams to pick from, right? We got
hot garbage
Atlanta Falcons, we got Denver Broncos, we got the Houston Texans, we got the Minnesota Vikings, we got the Giants, and we got the Jets. And I thought about this quite a bit, and I think I'm going to whittle it down to the 2 New York teams. I thought about this for, I don't know, about 2 days now since Sunday happened, and both teams look like hot garbage. And while I would love nothing more to bury Gettleman today and bury Daniel Jones, I think I'm going to give the award of the worst team in the NFL to New York fucking Jets. They are as bad as it gets, and they are 0-3 now. They are just coming off of a massive blowout to the Indianapolis Colts. It's 3 weeks, 3 blowout losses. And to start it off, man, Sam Darnold, he looks bad. He looks like he's regressed. This week against the Colts, he had 3 interceptions. 2 were pick sixes. Now, if you look at the team itself, the roster is bad. There's a lot of injuries. There's a lot of injuries, right? But I think the biggest issue with the Jets is Adam Gase. Adam Gase is as bad as it gets, man, as head coaches come. I was thinking about this the other day, and I truly can't think of a bad enough coach as Adam Gase. Do you think anybody takes the cake?
No. Like Freddie Kitchens even gets a pass.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so brutal. And I don't know how Mike McCagnon at the time and the Johnson family, the family that runs Johnson & Johnson, convinced themselves to let one phone call with Peyton friggin' Manning decide the future of their franchise with their young franchise quarterback that nobody was really that high on coming out of USC. And you gave it to this guy, the guy that looks like he's, lost high on bath salts at his opening press conference and then loves to just snort lines of freaking, smelling salts on the sideline. Like this is the guy that you're going to give the keys to the friggin' franchise to? How?
I think the worst part out of all of this is, if it was one thing that they hired Adam Gase because he's brilliant offensive coordinator, and that's what he was sold.
Miami. How did they hire him?
Well, listen, that's just the ineptitude of the New York Jets. When they made this move, I was just laughing. I was like, all right, that's fine. We'll have 2 more easier wins per year for the Patriots. But I think the issue is, the play calling is just so bad. The offense itself is unimaginative. There's most head coaches put your players in situations to win. I feel like he does the complete opposite. Like he's calling shit that he shouldn't be calling for a team that has such a bad roster and such a lack of talent. Like you can't be calling some of the shit that you're calling, bro. So I think I feel the worst for Sam Darnold because listen, I wasn't really high on Sam Darnold coming out of college. But I did think he was going to be better than this, but you're starting to see it's taking its toll on him, man. He is regressing. He is not looking good. And if I'm Joe Douglas and I'm ending up with the first overall pick, I am cleaning house. I'm getting rid of Sam Darnold for a bunch of draft capital. I'm getting rid of Adam Gase. I am taking Trevor Lawrence, and I'm rebuilding for the future.
No doubt. Can anybody tell me with like factual evidence what the goddamn offensive scheme is
I
for
have no idea.
for Adam Gase? Like, can anybody
I
point
have
to
no idea.
film and tell me like, hey, he runs a spread offense. Hey, he's a West Coast guy. He's a ground and pound kind of guy. Like, I don't see anything. I see a ball of confusion. They're in the middle of blowouts. And Jay, I wish we had a video camera to record like my reactions right now. But like he's looking at the play call sheet, like it's gonna just suddenly spring up and give him the goddamn answer when he's down like 36 points. His quarterback just threw 2 pick sixes, and combined for the last 3 weeks they scored 34 points. Where in one game alone, the Seattle Seahawks scored 38. Like I don't know how the Johnsons talked themselves into hiring a coach that did absolutely nothing with the Miami Dolphins in his first head coaching stint, short of that 1 year where they actually overachieved and went to the wild card round against Pittsburgh, and Matt Moore got his head taken off on a quarterback scramble. I don't know. This team is an absolute joke. They are the worst team in football. Like, at least, you know what, Jay? At least the New York Giants, they actually play hard all 4 quarters. Like, they were in it against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They still kind of squeaked back against the Chicago Bears. They didn't look that great last week without Saquon Barkley, but at least 2 out of the 3 games they played friggin' hard for Joe Judge. I can't speak to the same for the New York Jets. And I'm not even a Jets fan, and I'm about to have a fucking ulcer right now.
I feel bad. I feel bad for the Jets fans. Actually, I don't. Fuck them. They suck. Plus, they're in the division with the Patriots, so fuck them.
Yeah. Hey, you reap what you sow. That's all I got to say. You reap what you friggin' sow.
All right, let's move on to your storyline, and then after that, let's get Josh up in this conversation.
Speaking of bad football teams, we're going to talk about a division as a whole and how bad they are in the entire NFL. And that is the greatest division of all time, known as the NFC East. And by greatest, that's a very loose term. The Washington football team, they are leading the division at 1-2. I don't know how Dwayne Haskins has really, regressed compared to how he played the first week against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are, what are they? They're 0-2-1. They had the tie against the Cincinnati Bengals. They couldn't even pull off a win against the Bengals. Carson Wentz looks like he's taken 5 steps back, and I'm the biggest Carson Wentz apologist in the grand scheme of things, thinking he hasn't reached his full potential. It's not like he's gotten a bunch of soft tissue injuries. Like, Jay, we were talking about this offline, and, you were telling me what you were seeing from him, and he looks skittish. He's got happy feet. He's not hitting open people. When people are wide open and he makes a throw, it's either wide of the player or it's coming back as an interception. He looks bad. I think the stat sheet will show that, like, he had a decent day, but he really got bailed out by that game-time touchdown that he dived headfirst in the end zone for. But they really should have handled their business against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Dallas Cowboys are gonna cowboy. They were in that game for the most part, and a couple of costly penalties caused the Seattle Seahawks to get a second chance at going for 2. And then Dak Prescott, he escapes a sack and throws into triple coverage. If he throws an incomplete pass out of bounds to stop the clock, they'll still have one more shot to drop another play to go in the end zone. Like, this division's just bad, man. Like, I don't know how people can talk themselves into, like, the Eagles are going to be the playoff team coming out of here, or that, like, the Dallas Cowboys are going to run away with this division. Right now, on paper, the New York Giants at 0-3 are a half game out of a division lead where they don't have Saquon Barkley. They just signed Devonta Freeman, who hasn't been able to stay healthy the last couple of years. And really, they don't have any, matchup nightmare skill position players on that roster right now. I don't know. This is the worst division in all of football.
Well, let me ask you a question. Who do you think is the worst team in the NFC East?
The worst? Oh, God. Like,
I think
right
it's the Giants.
now,
I think it's the Giants.
It might be the Giants, but, like, it's kind of close right now, dude. Like, the saving grace for the Washington football team is you have a bunch of first-rounders on that defensive side of the football that are playing hard. Terry McLaurin, despite quarterback play from Dwayne Haskins is still getting his. They're coming up with different ways to get skill position players to football. It's just, Dwayne Haskins, like, I came into the season thinking he was going to have a breakout year, right? He was dropping the weight. He seemed more committed. His attitude changed. And I mean, Jay, he had 2 costly interceptions and a fumble that basically caused the goddamn game. Like, Ron Rivera, he came out, and you showed me this, came out in a press conference and basically drew the line in the sand and said, if Dwayne Haskins does not improve and improve quickly on his development and his performance and everything else, he is going to pull the plug. And right now, he has free reign from Dan Snyder, regardless of the fact that Dwayne Haskins is his son's best friend from high school. Ron Rivera is going to do what Ron Rivera thinks is best for the football team and not what Dan Snyder is going to feel with certain feelings of his family.
Yeah, listen, I think that Dwayne Haskins, or the Dwayne Train as I like to call him, he is probably one bad half away from being benched. Ron Rivera has some balls. He's not going to stand around for his defense playing lights out, or not lights out, but they're playing hard. I mean, they're there. They're making some plays. There's some effort, but I think Dwayne Train is really letting them down. But I think if I had to give a superlative of the worst team in the NFC East, I think I'm going to give it to the Giants, because I had them as a toss-up between the Jets and the Giants for being the worst team. And the only reason why I gave it to the Jets is because I think that Adam Gase is a much, much worse curse than Joe Judge. But if you look at the statistical numbers, it's not that good for the Giants either, man. Like, total offense, they're 31st. Scoring offense, they're 31st. Rushing, they're last. Third down defense, they're last. Giveaways, they're second. I mean, Daniel Jones, I think he's not a good quarterback, and I had my issues coming with him out of college, but the numbers are panning out that he's like Jameis Winston 2.0 out here. I think I saw a stat that over the last, year and a half, over the last 2 years, the only person that has had more turnovers is than Jameis Winston is Daniel Jones from the beginning of last year, so year and a half. So it's just been not good. I think the Giants are probably the worst out of the division, and the fact that this division gets a playoff spot is a travesty.
Yeah, this is the ineptitude, man. This is the ineptitude. And real quick on the Cowboys, and then we'll get Josh on here. Like, have you noticed really any different coaching style change from Mike McCarthy to Jason Garrett? Because Mike McCarthy right now is coaching like Jason Garrett 2.0. Like, I don't understand another instance of conning ownership into thinking that you've changed your ways and you're gonna bring in analytics. That was the worst 2-minute drill I've ever seen for them to try to come back against the Seattle Seahawks. Like, what was it? Like, back-to-back little itty-bitty screen passes or halfback draws, and there was no urgency to get up to the line of scrimmage. This whole division's a goddamn joke, man. It is friggin' brutal.
Yeah. All right. Are you ready to look forward to week 4 of the NFL season?
I am.
Awesome.
It's going to be joy. It's going to be a joy-gasm, let me tell you.
Awesome. Well, we're going to pick 4 games out of the week 4 slate. We're going to pick Pittsburgh versus Tennessee if they play. We're going to pick New England versus KC. Spoiler alert, I might be choosing the Patriots. Philadelphia versus San Fran, and then Atlanta versus Green Bay. So let's start with Pittsburgh versus Tennessee. Interesting matchup here, good sir. And I started looking at both Pittsburgh and Tennessee last night, and I think I see that both teams have potential. Both teams are playing at a high clip. Unfortunately, I can't make a decision on if they're a good team or not because the competition they've played against is pretty brutal. I think we mentioned earlier on Pittsburgh is 3-0 right now. However, they've played against 0-9 in the 3 teams they've played. I mean, the competition is just brutal. And then same thing. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I was just gonna follow up with that real quick, being like, yeah, like we really don't have the ultimate litmus test of this Steelers defense because of the low bar of competition that they faced so far.
Right, and then same thing with the Tennessee Titans, man. Listen, they're also 3-0. Unfortunately, they've played Denver, who's 0-3, Jacksonville, who's 1-2, and Minnesota, who's 0-3. So it's kind of hard to figure out if these teams are good. So I think this week, if they do end up playing, and if COVID doesn't take its task on the game itself, I think we'll really understand what each team is made out of. Now on the Pittsburgh side, man, that defense is all world, man. I mean, obviously, you got to take it with a grain of salt because they've played against some pretty bad quarterbacks. But if they are legit, then they're going to cause some serious problems for Ryan Tannehill. Furthermore, that offense looks like Big Ben is back. Looks like he's at a good clip. I mean, looks like he's in sync with his wide receivers. The running game is good. The wide receiver core for the Steelers, man, it's something to keep an eye on. It's probably the best wide receiver core in the NFL right now. They're producing at an all-time level, man. So I absolutely love Pittsburgh. Tennessee, I think they're gonna have some issues against Pittsburgh's defense. Give me Pittsburgh 24, probably 21.
Nice, nice. Great pick. So fun fact, I was on the official, betting app of the Pro Football Radio podcast. Just DraftKings doesn't know it, but it's the DraftKings Sportsbook. And I believe, Jay, that they actually took this game off the board because
Ooh.
I've refreshed it. I think there's just so much in the air right now that they actually closed the bets out for this game at the moment. But I mean, real quick on the Tennessee side of things, A.J. Brown looks like he would miss this game if they are able to play. So I expect another good showing from Jonnu Smith, the tight end, who's more of an athletic freak. He can also play the wide receiver. He can play inside the slot. He is a potential top 10 tight end in the NFL if the stars align correctly. Derrick Henry looked like he picked up where he left off. I think if the Titans are going to have a chance against this all-world defense, they're going to have to pound the rock and they're going to have to grind this defense down with Derrick Henry. And, don't sleep on Ryan Tannehill. He kind of picked up where he left off last year, even in the AFC Championship game. He's been super efficient in the passing game. He's been unstoppable in the red zone with the touchdowns that they've been putting up. If we could bet this game, I kind of like Tennessee in this. I think the Stars are going to just kind of align perfectly with the game plan with Derrick Henry. That's no shade against the Steelers. The Steelers offense. They have probably one of the top wide receiver cores in the NFL. Even though, Jay, I can't remember. Did Deontay Johnson go out? He did. Yep. He did get dinged up, right?
He didn't come back.
He came back. Okay, so
he did not come back.
He did not. Okay, so what was it? A concussion? I think it was a concussion, right?
I forget what it was, but that was a big loss, man. I think Deontay Johnson is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL, and I know this might be a negative comparison, but he reminds me of Antonio Brown, man. The short, stout wide receiver that's quick and shifty. That's what Antonio Brown was, and that's what Johnson is.
Yeah, no, I can see the comparisons too. No shade. I really like Tennessee here at home. I think it's a good spot if they're able to play. You have to figure, Jay, if you had to guess the line, what would you put it at? Like 3?
Yeah, it's going to be like 3.5, 4 max.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Give me Tennessee. If it's at 3, in points-wise, I'd bet Tennessee to cover as well, too, if it was around 3 points.
Yeah. Listen, next game we're going to be picking is going to be the New England Patriots versus the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think this is probably the best game of the weekend, right?
Oh, for sure. You have
there. I mean, you got some pretty crap games for the most part.
I mean, even like Monday Night Football, joke. Sunday night, Eagles 49ers, okay. We don't even know if Nick Mullins is going to play. That's really it. Like for a week 4 slate, there really isn't that many decent games. We refused on this podcast to talk about Thursday Night Football, so it really is the Pats Chiefs in Arrowhead, correct? Yeah, they're on the road in Arrowhead.
Yep, in Arrowhead. So listen,
seating capacity too.
I was telling you last night, I am one win away from becoming an obnoxious New England we're going to the Super Bowl fan again.
Here we go.
I am loving what I'm seeing out of the Patriots. We won this past week against the Raiders, and we dominated that game on the running side of things. Now, I think our strongest asset is our offensive line game, and I think the reason why I'm leaning New England towards over the Kansas City Chiefs is the fact that the offensive line is going to be able to run the ball. We're going to be able to take control of the time of possession, and Patrick Mahomes is going to sit on the sideline. I think if we have a chance of winning in Arrowhead, it's going to have to mirror that 2018 game plan that we had when we went in there for the AFC Championship game. Now, in regards to running the ball, we don't just run it with the running backs. Cam Newton also will do some design runs and essentially rack up the yardage. So I think if we get into a shootout with the Kansas City Chiefs, we'll lose. But if we can keep it close in the 20s, I give the Patriots a really good chance of winning this game. Now, we've already talked about Kansas City Chiefs and how good they are. I think the key here is you're going to have to blitz up the middle, up the A-gaps, and make sure Patrick Mahomes doesn't get outside the containment, because if he gets outside contained and you're blitzing, it's game over. He's going to throw it downfield. It's a touchdown. You've lost the game. Now, the other bigger key is you're going to have to essentially bracket Tyreek Hill, which we've always done. We've always bracketed Tyreek Hill, and I've always asked Stephon Gilmore to take Sammy Watkins. The only other issue left there is Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Travis Kelce. How do you stop those two guys? So I think essentially what you're going to see, Bill Belichick is going to come out and do what he always does, bracket Tyreek Hill, make sure he doesn't go off. And if you look at Tyreek Hill's numbers against the Patriots, they're not really that great. And then you're going to have to ask Stephon Gilmore to step up and take Sammy Watkins. So I am going to go on a little bit of a limb here, Mr. Da Puma Silva. I think I'm going to take the Patriots to win this game, probably like 31-24, man. Laugh it up.
I like where your head's at. I mean, they are 7-point dogs on the road in Arrowhead. I don't know, man. Like, from what I saw with this defense, what they did and how they neutered the Baltimore Ravens last night. I mean, let's be honest. This offense is really just Cam Newton, maybe Rex Burkhead. Like, he showed up against the Las Vegas Raiders on Sunday, but he really wasn't much of a factor in Seattle. He caught a few passes out of the backfield, but I mean, nobody on this offensive side of the football short of Cam really scares you. Damian Harris may be coming back. He is eligible to come off a short-term IR this week, but I haven't seen any reports indicating that. And the other thing, too, is there's been a lot of opt-outs on this defense. If they were at full capacity, I would give them a puncher's chance, or maybe a little bit more of a puncher's chance, because I think on any given Sunday they would have a puncher's chance against Kansas City. But from what I saw against Baltimore here, I think the Chiefs are going to roll in this game. I think they're going to cover. I don't know, man. I don't really see the amount of success on the ground that Cam Newton and company are going to have. And with Steve Spagnuolo's defense, even at a quarter of the capacity right now, I still think it's one of the better defenses in the NFL right now for sure. And I think they're going to pick up where they left off in Baltimore. So I think they're going to roll against the Pats for this game. Well,
we talked about this in the A block, and essentially what the Kansas City Chiefs do to running teams is they make them get out of their game plan. Our game plan going is going to be to run the ball as many times as possible, control time of possession. But when you put that offensive pressure, when you feel that offensive pressure from Kansas City and they're up 21 points, then you naturally get out of your offense, right? So just like the Ravens got out of their offense, there will be a point in time in the third or fourth quarter that the Patriots have to go out of their offense. And that's when Cam Newton is going to have to become Cam Newton that we saw in Seattle. Can he duplicate that? I mean, this is going to be the biggest litmus test for the Patriots, I think, all year. Essentially, you're going to realize who the Patriots are. I think that he will be able to duplicate that passing attack that he had up in Seattle. And I think that's why I'm taking them to win. But again, it's a tall order, especially in Arrowhead. So we'll see how it pans out, man.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely going to be a fun game to watch, and of course it's at 4:25. So hopefully that's on CBS, and I may or may not be able to watch that while I'm at work.
You will be able to. It's on CBS, yeah. I think it's like the game of the week for CBS.
Thank God.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the Philadelphia versus San Francisco game. Interesting matchup here. Let me start with San Francisco because it'll be the easier one to kind of get through. They have so many injuries. It's just mind-boggling that they're still, able to perform at a high level. But they were able to make very quick, mince meat out of the Giants on Sunday. I think the final score was like 36-9, and I simply gotta say this: Kyle Shanahan is so fucking good, man. He is so underrated. He is so good. Essentially, he got 36 points and a massive offensive performance from backups and CJ Mullins. Let that sink in. Like, I do understand the Giants aren't the best of teams, and I understand it was going to be a cakewalk, but the level of dominance they showed coming off a week where they got, just throttled with injuries against the Jets, they couldn't fly back home. They had to go to the Greenbrier, stay on the East Coast, all kinds of airplane issues getting hit on the tarmac, all kinds of MRI truck issues, and they're still able to go out there and perform that highly just speaks to the organizational structure that San Francisco 49ers have. And on the other side, the Philadelphia Eagles. What are they going to do with Carson Wentz? I mean, that is the question that I am sure is being asked a million times over on the Philadelphia Airways. I'm sure a lot of people are yelling for him to be benched. And I think if Jalen Hurts was gonna show something in practice, I think he would have been out there already. I think the fact that you haven't seen Jalen Hurts on the field probably speaks to the fact that he isn't ready. And who can blame him? I mean, the guy's a rookie. He's only 3 games in, so I don't think it's time for Jalen Hurts just yet. However, the amount of the performance that Carson Wentz is putting on tape, it's pretty bad, man. Like, I mean, the turnovers are outrageous. The guy is a shell of who he was a couple of years ago when he was making the MVP run, and he just doesn't look good. Simply put, I mean, the guy can't complete a pass at some points during the game. I think the bigger issue here is I think the coaching staff has lost confidence in Carson Wentz as well, and you can see that in overtime. They essentially went for the tie, and they said, you know what, we're okay with getting a tie. We're not going to try to win this game because we have absolutely no trust in our quarterback. So I think that's something to monitor as well. Truthfully, this game could be a toss-up, but with the way San Francisco's playing, even with backups, man, I'm going to go with San Francisco big. Probably like a 14-point win.
Right. The 49ers, I think they're favored by 7 points at home. I mean, we saw the Brandon Ayuk breakout game. He got a couple of carries out of the backfield, scored on an end-around 19-yard touchdown. And, I mean, I said this in the last episode that Kyle Shanahan loves himself some Nick Mullins. I mean, there were teams calling in the offseason this year and last year asking if he was available in trade, and the 49ers said no. So they know what they have in Nick Mullins. They have a more than capable backup quarterback and definitely understands the system here. My question I'm going to pose to you about the Eagles. How much do you think, Frank Reich was on that coaching staff as the offensive coordinator in 2017, 2018, when they made the MVP run and the Eagles ended up winning the Super Bowl that year. Ever since then, Wentz has not looked the same, and it really reared its ugly head the first couple of games this year. The first game, I'll give kind of a pass because Lane Johnson wasn't there, and Miles Sanders wasn't playing as well too. And they went up against an All-Pro, All-World front four and front seven of the Washington football team. But I mean, there really wasn't any excuse to be manhandled by the Cincinnati Bengals last week. How much of that would you put on? Maybe the coaching staff is not just getting the best out of Carson Wentz and putting him in the spots to succeed, because the drop off from when Frank Reich left to now is insane.
Listen, I've always said that at the end of the day, players go out there and execute. Obviously, the coaching staff has a big hand in the game plan, but at the end of the day, the players do go out there and execute the game plan. Now, I don't know if the game plan is absolute trash. Obviously, we're not in those meetings during the week, but I can see whatever they're throwing out there, he's not executing properly. So it goes hand in hand. If the coaching staff isn't really playing to his strengths, then shame on them. But if the coaching staff is putting in a solid game plan, but Carson Wentz is going out there and just not playing well, and that's what I'm going to lean towards, I think he's just not playing the game plan as well as he should be. I don't know if it's an issue with just his confidence level. I don't know if it's an issue with just his chemistry with his teammates. But I don't see that guy that I saw from a couple of years ago, even though he had Frank Reich a couple of years ago. But I'm not going to go ahead and put this solely on the coaching staff, because this coaching staff did get you to the Super Bowl. This coaching staff had the balls to go with Nick Foles and call some of the craziest plays possible and put him in a position to win. So I think this is more on Carson Wentz than it is on the coaching staff.
I'd say a little bit of both. I mean, let's not make it sound like they just decided to bench Wentz in the Super Bowl run. He blew his knee out. But there were times in this game where it seemed like Doug Peterson was getting a little bit too cute with the play calling. Like, Miles Sanders was having his way on the ground in this game, and they kind of went away from that. But all this, long story short, I like the Eagles to bounce back here. The secondary for the 49ers, it's still, even with Witherspoon back there, it doesn't really scare you that much. Richard Sherman is still going to miss this game. I kind of like the offensive weapons a little bit more for the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe we'll get an Alshon Jeffrey sighting. Who knows? Give me the Eagles. Give me the Eagles to win. Definitely think they're going to cover the 7 points.
Awesome, cool. All right, final game of the Week 4 slate that we're going to pick is Atlanta versus Green Bay. We've chronicled our feelings about Atlanta in the A block. You guys can go back and listen to it. We went in fairly hard on them, so we're going to blow by this. But the Packers, listen, they're good. I think at this point you've got to give it to them. They beat the Saints. They beat the Lions. The Lions just had a great win against the Arizona Cardinals, and they beat up on a fairly bad Minnesota team. But I think Aaron Rodgers is playing at, I think probably his best year since his Super Bowl run. I mean, I think this is the best Aaron Rodgers we've seen in probably like 5-6 years. So I think the guy is playing at a great level. I think they're getting great production from Aaron Jones. He's running the ball well. Devontae Adams didn't play this past weekend, so just imagine what happens when he gets back in. But it looks like Alan Lazard had some chemistry with him last week that's kind of picked up, and they kind of had a great connection on Sunday night. So I think this is going to be one of those games where Atlanta's going to probably go up by 25 points, and the Packers are going to have them right where they want to. Give me Packers like 35-28.
Oh, for sure. I think the Packers are going to roll in this game. There's nothing else to say, Jay. The Falcons just can't get out of their own goddamn way here. And, maybe Devontae Adams comes back. Who knows? The hamstring issue, soft tissue injuries are such a pain in the ass. I mean, he might be able to come back this week. It might be a couple of weeks. I mean, who knows? But if I'm going to say this real quick too, if I heard another stat of, hey, Aaron Rodgers hasn't thrown to a first-round draft pick in, since XYZ, and the last one was Mercedes Lewis, and he wasn't even on the team back then. I mean, you know what? I really don't care what round you were drafted in. Alan Lazard looked like, he belonged in this offense. I think he had like 130 yards receiving and in a touchdown or two. Aaron Jones is almost a cheat code in the backfield. If the only thing that worries me is the defensive side of the football for the Green Bay Packers, rather. They still have issues stopping the run. If this is going to be a spot where Todd Gurley kind of looks like the Todd father of old, maybe this is it. You team that up with Brian Hill. But, I mean, according to DraftKings right now, the spread is 7.5. Give me the Green Bay Packers laying 7.5 points. I think this is going to be another embarrassment for the Falcons, and this time it's going to be on national television. I think it's in their heads so much right now that I think they're just going to, they can't help themselves and not get out of the way of the losing freight train.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's going to be Green Bay fairly easily. So let's end this podcast. Quite an adventurous night, right, Puma?
But to say the least.
Just to give you guys an update on our guest for today, Josh couldn't get online because of some technical difficulties, so we're going to try to shoot for next week for him to get on. So I didn't want you guys thinking he flaked out, and he wanted to let you guys know he didn't flake out either. He just is having some technical difficulties, as we all do. So we'll try to get him on as soon as possible. And with that, I'm going to give it to Puma to plug it up.
Yep, let's get the hell out of here on that note. You can find this episode and previous episodes of the podcast under Pro Football Radio or Pro Football Radio Podcast, depending on what platform. We are available on SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Pro Football Radio Podcast, Twitter at PFR Podcast. I'm on the Twitter machine, Brando_Puma. Jay Cheema is at Jay Cheema. Like, subscribe, download. Follow us on social media. Be sure to hit us up. We'll be. I'm refusing to watch Thursday Night Football, so don't even bother trying to at me or slide in the DMs to talk about the game because I'm not watching it. I will find something else on television to watch besides that hot garbage. But other than that, you want to talk to slates, you want to talk some little sports betting, hit us up, and we'll be sure to let you know our picks for the other games as well, too.
Awesome. Well, listen, that concludes the podcast for this week. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Via con Dio.